I'm going to start off with a story. Not a long story, but it's still a personal story. When I was in my teens and I started getting bigger, because I was always a small kid up until 8th grade. I started 8th grade at 4'11", ended 8th grade at 5'8". And at that point, as the growth process was going on, I started feeling a little more confident in myself. When you're 4'11" and you're smaller than a lot of other people, you tend to stay away from fights. As I got to a place where not only was I as big as people who used to kind of bully me, but a little bit bigger all of a sudden, I was willing to entertain the idea. But I had always made this promise to my dad that there was nothing I could do about it when I was small, but I could do something about it when I was bigger. Which is, I would never hit anybody first. Just wasn't going to do it. So I would never throw the first punch or, pick up something and hit someone. I was never going to do that. I made that promise to my dad. However, Dad had always said, but if someone throws a punch at you first, go for it. So what I used to do is, if I was in that mood, someone had gotten me so mad, I really wanted to fight, I started calling them names. Now, I've never cussed, so I've never done anything like that, but I called them names, I said stuff about their family, I just basically chewed them out until they threw the first punch. And then at that point, I got to hit them because they threw the first punch. I never hit anybody in the face because I was a little smarter than that. One, I didn't want to hit anyone in the face. Two, it was never my intention to beat anybody up, but I definitely wanted to hit them. And what a lot of people never think of, which I never can figure this out, is if you hit someone in the stomach, you're going to knock the air out of them. And they're always going to bend over. And then if you smack them in the back or whatever, they're going to fall on the ground. So you've knocked the air out of them. You've knocked them on the ground. You know what? I was done. And, most of the time they just stayed down. A couple of times they got up and then they rushed me, in which case now I got to do it again. And no one ever seemed to learn from that. But I never threw the first punch, but I always egged people on. Now, why am I telling that story? On my other channel, I did a video a couple weeks ago, and I said, I don't know that much is going to happen as far as race relations go after what happened to George Floyd. I said that because we've been there before. This time we actually saw someone die on camera, but we have been here before. We've been going through this stuff for, 40, 50 years? You can go back 100 years. Only minorities didn't have that kind of power. You didn't have that much support in the same way. So it was a little bit different back then. But right now, what's going on? This happened in the 60s. Heck, we got Bernie Sanders on film protesting back in the 60s. So, this is not anything new. Yes, we've got social media now. Yes, we have a lot of companies that are taking a stand and saying, okay, we're going to get better and whatever. But you know what? You had that 10 years ago. For that matter, you had that back in the 90s. I hope for the better, but I don't know that's going to happen. Why? Because a couple of days ago, I was watching this video of some protesters in front of the police. And the protesters were calling the police names and saying these pejoratives against them and screaming in their face and getting up to them with the intention, if you ask me, of trying to provoke them into doing something so that they could say, see, I didn't do anything except express my First Amendment rights, and they hit me. And I know that tactic because that was a tactic I did in the 70s as a teenager. And I'm not saying that there aren't times when maybe you get a little vocal and you get a little spirited. But what I am going to say is that what seems to be missing overall is people sitting down and having a conversation. We're screaming a lot at each other. I'm not going to lie. There's been a lot of stuff that has inflamed me and gotten me real emotional over the past bunch of weeks. And of course, this followed up on the COVID-19 thing. So, if you had a reason to be mad at something, this just added more to it. So I understand that. However, one of the other things I've done is I've kind of done some videos talking about things that have happened in my life that were related to race. And there were a few people who said, you should have done this and you should have done that. Well, I didn't do that, but I'm telling the story. And I'm telling the story because this is my way of communicating with people. And I get some people who have talked to me about how that shouldn't have happened, and maybe we can have this other kind of conversation. And I've got another friend of mine who's starting to do a series of videos. I'm not sure if she's going to publicize it, but she's getting groups of people together on Zoom of different backgrounds and such. And we're just talking about issues. And we're finding out a few things about each other. Because that has to happen. You've got these mega corporations that are saying, well, we're going to be better at race. Well, what does that actually mean? And it's not just about race. I mean, let's face it. It's about gender equality. It's about disability rights. There's a lot of folks out there who are being missed on all of this kind of thing. And yes, I have always said that I'm going to concern myself first with quote-unquote mine. But, you can't just say, okay, I got what I want, forget everybody else. It just doesn't work that way. So we have to have conversations. We really have to get some people talking together. I've done a couple of diversity trainings. I spoke in a couple of different states on the topic of diversity with the idea that maybe we can have a conversation. But until that happens, there's not going to be any real change in this country, and I feel bad about that. And I also feel bad that it's gotten to a point where people are just screaming at the police and trying to encourage them to do violence. And I don't want to, but I kind of put myself in their place just for that moment, because if it's me, I've gone to places where I sometimes wished someone would come over and scream something in my face so that I could hit them. I'm not gonna lie. Not as I've gotten older, but even in my 30s, I kept wishing for that to happen every once in a while. Something about being, 6 foot big black man that deferred a lot of that. But still, sometimes I wished it would happen just so I could take it out on somebody and say they threw the first punch. We need to have a conversation. I hope that maybe some real conversations happen. I hope that as a lot more people of color, mainly black people, but people of color in America, are actually telling everybody what's gone on in their lives and what they've had to put up with, that someone will not only say, you know what, I understand you, I agree with you, I'm going to stand by you, I'm going to help you, but that conversations open. I don't want to sit there and say that this group is totally to blame, because there's a lot of people in that group who aren't to blame at all. But we got to have some conversations. We've got to have ways to make things fair for everybody. I don't say equal, I say fair. And if that happens, maybe we can get there. That's my point today. My name is Mitch Mitchell. If you like this kind of thing, please think about hitting a like. Think about subscribing. I put these out because I'm only trying to help. Y'all take care.